The award jury had lighted your contribution to music in three separated phases: as composer, conductor, and institutional figure. How did each of these three facets arise in your career?
Well, you cannot plan your career really so meticulously that you know ahead of time what we will do during the whole life. I can only say that these three departments were one after another and not in the same time. You know, first I am a composer, and I still am a composer, and I insist on that because the other occupations have put me in different configurations. So I am a composer, first. Then, second, I am a performer, and I discovered that I could be a performer later in life. So I did not begin before, when I was 40, 45 even, the segment of performing. And then three, as I was more and more known and more responsible for organizing concerts or symposium or things like that, I was asked to be at the head of an institution. And that came last. So you see, the development is very organic, but in the same time, totally improvised.
Would it be true to say that by cultivating all those facets, you have managed to create an environment supportive of your creative needs and aspirations?
I suppose, yeah, because, you know, these organisms were directly to answer to the difficulties I met when I was faced with institutions. For instance, to make a modern program with an orchestra, you have really to be a virtuoso, let's say, in organization, I mean, because then also you have to organize the number of rehearsals, you have to organize the rehearsals with what performers, and so on and so forth. So that's not very easy, at least, and you are obliged to be involved in really very trivial decisions. But not only that, if you want to change the routine of concerts, then you have to invent, you know, some solutions totally new, and that the musician will not accept automatically, but you have to convince them first, and then to play with them a very subtle game of now, later, maybe, and yes. So you see, the part is really difficult to play for times, and I don't say that I have performed this part wondrously every time. Yeah, some difficulties I could not surmount, and sometimes I was really prisoner of even the things I have used.
How would you respond to those who say that contemporary music is a minority taste reserved for elites?
Well, of course, there is an elite. There was a very good performer, in the theater in France 20 years ago. He's dead now, but he said the elite should be as large as possible. And that's also what I think. Of course, you need culture for appreciating many works, and even works of the classical period. But of course, more recent works are really difficult to absorb sometimes. First, because the composer has the right to write what he wants, and second, because the performer has the right also to perform the pieces according to the instrumental needs. So the elite is to be considered, but not to be only considered. And therefore also, I mean, the general culture should be much more involved with music than it is, especially in France.
You have said that it is important to expand the repertoire without fear of what the public think. Do you think the crisis has made concert programmers more risk-averse?
Well, I suppose programmers are really sometimes very shy, and much too shy. They don't, you know, you don't speak about repertoire constantly, because there is nothing more to say if you have written 10 times or 15 times for a paper just to say how well it was performed or how bad it was performed, at the end does not interest anybody anymore. And I think also even in the communication, they should be aware that if they insist too much on a narrow repertoire, then also, the audience will react passively this time. And if you give a work which is provocative, well written but provocative, and interesting and well written, then also, you don't have to fear the reaction of the audience. On the contrary, the audience will maybe think, I have heard that I was shocked, certainly. I don't understand exactly what the composer means, but maybe if I come a second time, if I listen to a second time to this work, then maybe I will understand it. And he is put into doubt at a point. And therefore, that's interesting to have this provocation and this doubt inserted in the programs very strongly and very. That's an important thing for the future.
You represent the music of the 20th century, but how do you think your compositional and also institutional legacy are being felt in the 21?
The question is easy to answer and in the same impossible to answer. If you would have asked me as not a teenager, but as a 20 in 1945, what do you think about the music of the first century? I would have already answered the names by names. And the names, I knew them already perfectly well. It was Schoenberg, Berg-Webern on one side, Stravinsky, Bartók on the other side, and as a kind of supplement, Varese would have been an interesting proposal. So, but nearby, I would maybe have answered Hindemith or Honegger. And now you can see that with the right perspective, that the choice was not this one. And I think that if you are too close to the period, you can be really sometimes very wrong. If you are with distance, then also you have a better judgment. And I think also you have to wait for that 50 years more.